So, this little baby might be coming back out again. It appears the rumors are getting louder and louder over our friend, the RTX 3060. 12 gig, which is a good thing. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. So, okay, there's a couple things that may be good about this, a couple things that may be bad. First of all, the RTX 3060, don't get me wrong, great video card. 12 gig of VRAM before we knew that we needed VRAM. That, in essence, this might have been one of the reasons that some software engineers, programmers, game developers got a little lazy around the edges and decided not to optimize quite as much, because the natural tendency was to think, well, if you're going to put 12 gig on a medium-priced card or a mid-priced card, then it's going to be a no-brainer to have 16 or 24 or 32 on bigger and better cards. And so the 12 gig RTX 3060 hit that sweet spot, was a decent price after the conundrum. Because remember, when the conundrum hit, NVIDIA was saying, oh, you're going to be able to get an RTX 3070 for $500, $499. We never saw that puppy for $499 during that entire time. As a matter of fact, if you're like me, you had to be on a waiting list or some kind of Newegg queue to the Newegg Shuffle or EVGA's list. That's how I got my 3060 Ti. Was I was actually in the queue for EVGA, RIP. Finally got my 3060 Ti, which was 8 gig. This was 12. So it coming back out may be good or maybe bad, and let's go over a couple of things, a couple of reasons why, or a couple things, but running around in my head up there as to why this might be a little bit of a problem. Now, we do know that because 12 gig is a good spot. It's not, well, I mean, you're seeing cards now that have 16 gig. The 9060 is one of those that comes with 12 or 6. I mean, with 8 or 16. The 4060 or 5060, I believe, come to mind that have an 8 or 16 gig variant. This had a 12 gig variant. Then later they tried to sneak in an 8 gig, and I don't think that was very popular. The rumor is that it's going to be the 12 gig version. Now, the reason why this is good or can happen, or NVIDIA can slide this in like this, and I mentioned this a few times, this is on Samsung's 8 nanometer node. This is not on the smaller dies or smaller nodes that TSMC has to try to allocate everybody's space for right now. This should be a little bit more widely available and easier to produce. Some problems with that. The current, I believe it's the RTX 5050 that's in the $330 range, or $330 MSRP. Good luck. If this card comes out for around that price tag, that's not going to fly, because it probably, from what I see, especially if they do succeed in coming out with a 9 gig version of that, because they'll put 3 gig of memory on each module instead of 2, and then they will be able to rearrange a few things. That price, that card outperforms this card, I believe, by a good 10 to 15%. So we're talking about, we're trying to sell a card. The only way that they might be able to get, and maybe their thought process is, if they sell this card for $275 or $300 and you can't get the other card, maybe you'll settle for this. But you can find these pretty regularly used, still in good shape, because people wanted to take care of these cards because they were such a good card. It stayed on the Steam survey, and I made mention of this too. It stayed on the Steam survey as about as many weeks as Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon stayed on the top 100. Or number one, as a matter of fact. It was there for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. This card was one of those that just stayed on the top of the Steam survey. In fact, I think it's swapped places a couple times with the 4060 back and forth, and I don't know which one's back on top again. Regardless, there are a few things that I don't know if it's a wish list or a thought process. 12 gig, yes, that's the rumor. But because they're reproducing these new, is there room on the die to put more tensor cores? Or is there some way to involve, I don't think involve is the right word. Maybe modify or evolve this into something that maybe takes I don't know, maybe takes DLSS 4.5 or 4.0 or 4.5, or makes frame gen more accessible, or some of the newer technologies. Can we go back and add that to the old die, or are we just going to repress the old die and say, oh, here you go? Is this an opportunity for NVIDIA to do gamers a solid by saying, hey, we know we're going to come out with this card for 250, 275, close to 3, but now it has XYZ on it. And so is that something that can happen? I'm not familiar enough with the type of architecture or the limits of the architecture from the 3000 series to say that that can't happen, or that can only happen with the newer cards. If you're going to re-release something on the old die, it seems to me you might be able to put some of the newer components or the newer things that allow for that, maybe whether it's tensor cores or whatever, maybe that could be something that would allow for you to have the frame gen, or for more. You can't just re-release the same card that does the same performance and expect people to pay the same price as something that performs 10 or 15 or 18% better. Especially now when you've already announced that you're going to do that same card with a 9 gig variant instead of an 8 gig variant. So I don't even know if that's going to be the same price. We have no idea, because that's been pushed off. The rumors for this seem to say that this is going to be, this wafer is going to start being distributed to several companies in June for production in July, and maybe shelves by the end of July, or sometime near the end of summer. So that could be a good thing. Now, like I said, this is on a different process. This is on a different node. It's on the Samsung node, not TSMC. So they could conceivably make a lot of these and flood the market. Now, if they brought this out at, say, 200, 220, 225, that would be spectacular. Or if you're trying to tell me, oh, we're going to stick to a $250, $275 price tag, but we're going to introduce XYZ, maybe that works. But what if you get one of these cards and it's exactly the same, and you're trying to figure out how it performs with whatever system you've got right now? Is it worth trying to pick this card up brand new as opposed to used, or whatever, or even if you get it used? So what I did is I ran a bunch of benchmarks. I've run benchmarks before. I've showed the 3060 before, but this time what I've done is I've gone ahead, since I've been playing with that 4th gen Haswell back there. I ran the benchmarks with it, full set, and then I ran with the 5800X that's on my test bed over there, because that gave me the most solid numbers. That and the 12700, were both the Intel 12700K, were both very, very similar. So they were within a few frames of each other. So I went ahead and gave us a comparison with that and with the 4th gen, and your mileage may vary. And I'm going to go ahead and show the benchmarks. But if you've got some processor in between those two, then your performance is going to be somewhere in between these charts. This is not a comparison of how well the 5800 does compared to a 4th gen Intel. We know what should happen there. That AM4 5800X should have no problem with it. But if you're looking like, all right, what can I expect back out of this card if I got a deal on it, then we'll take a look, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Now, the surprising thing for me was that some of these games, like Black Ops 7, actually performed pretty well. And some of these games really were, for lack of a better term, piss poor. Some of these you would almost have to use frame gen. But it's a little bit more difficult trying to use frame gen unless it's a software enabled instead of hardware enabled. That's why I said if this card does come back out and for some reason somehow they're able to introduce that or put that on the die, whether whatever elfin magic they're going to use to do that, then that could work. That could be okay. And when I did the testing, things like Monster Hunter Wilds, Marvel Rivals, I did not use any kind of frame gen, any kind of I just tested it straight with no extras. So you could see that, especially with those two games, it suffered. Everything else is pretty playable. I mean, those games were also playable, but you'd have to manage your expectations with an older CPU or a downgraded CPU. Now, as far as everything else, with a newer CPU, AM4 or maybe 11th or 12th gen Intel and up, you're going to be fine. You're going to be absolutely fine, and you're not going to have any issues at all, and you're going to, fat, dumb, and happy, and your card is going to outrun most of the refresh rate on your monitors. So I think you're going to be in great shape there. But given all that, you're probably going to fall somewhere in between. There's a lot of us out there that have we might be running a 3700X or 3600 from AMD, or we might be running a 10th or 11th gen Intel or what have you, or maybe a 12400 or something. Like I said, your mileage is going to vary. Things they'll fall in place somewhere in there. But overall, this is still going to be a really, really good experience. Don't get me wrong. Even with the 4th gen Haswell, this 3060, which should not be going in there, did pretty well. And it surprised me. It really did surprise me on things like Black Ops. Once I got the TPM 2.0 module and put that in there, it surprised me how well that ran. Now, we are going to keep playing with that because I think I've ordered, it depends on if it goes through on eBay, a Z97 motherboard that already has secure boot and all that stuff on the motherboard, I believe. And it has NVMe. So if that comes in, obviously that changes our testing a little bit. I believe the one I ordered or the one I put a bid on has a 4670, so maybe we'll test the 4670 and the Xeon processors that's in there to kind of see what the differences may be with that. I don't know if I'll test it with the same RTX 3060 to see what the differences are there, but it probably couldn't hurt. I want to really think that in a situation like that where you've got a mid-range or maybe a little bit older, say 4th gen, that you're probably better off using a GTX 1070 or 1080 or maybe an RTX 2060. I think that's probably maybe the better bet for something like that instead of the 3060. But if you can get a 3060 cheap, it's not like they're going to reproduce the 2060s. So if the 3060 is where you got, maybe it's worth having. So I think with anything, this is going to come down to price. Anything is a good product if the price is right. I think that's what they say. There are no bad products; there are only bad prices. Maybe this is the case there too. So my hope is that if they're going to come back out with the RTX 3060, I would love to see this thing come out, or maybe even a 3060 Super or something. That would be interesting. But I would love to see this, and don't confuse this with just RTX 3060 and call it a day. Let's put something behind it, a 3060X, or just so somebody looking in a store knows this is a different GPU or a different card. Do something, V2 or version 2 or whatever. It's just something to let us know it's a little bit different. If they were to be able to do something that would enable some of these enhanced features or upgraded features that we have now that we didn't have 5 years ago, that would sweeten the pot quite a bit. And it would be pretty attractive at that point, especially if you can keep the price down. So I'm kind of curious what you guys think. Do you have one of these? Do you have the RTX 3060? Did you have the 12 gig, or did you come late in the game and only got the 8 gig, or were you able to buy it brand new, or did you have to wait on a waiting list or a queue forever during the conundrum to try to get one of these bad boys? Or did you manage to snag, say, an RTX 3070 or 3080 or something? Let me know that. If you don't mind, tell me in the comments. What are you thinking? If this does come back out, what would you like to see? Would you like to see a better price? Would you like to see a better feature? Would you like to see it just the way it was? Because it was pretty much perfect the way it was. Who knows? Let me know in the comments if you don't mind while you're down there, or if you got anything out of the video, go ahead and throw a like on it. If you're not already subscribed, please do. I would love that. I would dearly appreciate that, so we can hit 2,000, 3,000, and beyond. Don't forget to hit me up on the other socials. I'm streaming a lot more often on that Purple channel. I'm trying to get it at least a couple times a week and for a little bit longer each time. So we'll get back in the swing of that. But if you don't do any of those things, if you don't like, subscribe, or hit the other socials, please just do me one favor. Let's be good to each other. Smile, wave, hold the door open. Just do something kind. It doesn't cost anything to be kind, and right now we can probably use it probably as much or more than we ever could. So yeah, just that's it. That's all I can say. Anyway, that is all I have for right now. Obviously, I got other stuff going on, including my rig right here that's sitting beside me that's got an AIO and some other stuff. I went ahead and ordered an air cooler for it and another set of fans, and that's going to be coming up, and we're going to redo that. Obviously, we're going to, if we get that Z97 motherboard, we're going to be swapping out and doing some stuff. Other stuff going on too, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, that is stuff I got no business getting into, but until I get that way, that's all I got for right now. So I'll see you later.